Hello there, and welcome to the Get French Football News Preview Show. I'm Nathan Staples, and joining me this evening are Adam White and Jeremy Smith. There's not, well, the Ligue 1 season is slowly coming to a close with around about 6 to 7 week games left. So it's going to be interesting as they keep fighting between the bottom, but although the top spot may be over by this weekend. But let's first look ahead. Well, before we look ahead at the weekend coming up, here's the latest headlines. Nîmes managed to go into the top 10 over the midweek as they lifted themselves above Rennes with a 3-1 victory. Renaud Ripart's header opened the scoring, but Adrien Unu forced an own goal from Hervé Liboy to equal out the scorelines at halftime. Before two strikes from Denis Bouanga and Antonin Bobochan saw Nîmes Olympique run away with it in the second half, with the away side also seeing Benjamin Andre sent off. And that's all for now. So for all the latest in the world of French football, do head on over to our website at www.getfootballnewsfrance.com and follow us on Twitter at GFFN. We'll start tonight with that game before we look ahead to what is a really interesting Ligue 1 weekend. And Adam, it was an interesting one, really. Nîmes have been in pretty good form as of late, so it's not the greatest surprise. But at the same time, will it be a frustrating one for Rennes fans that they couldn't give themselves a bit of a better showing in there, given that if they did win this game, they would be right in the mix for the Europa League place?
Perhaps, yeah. I definitely think this was an opportunity missed for Rennes to some extent. Win this game, 45 points, put some level with Montpellier, a couple of points behind Nice and Saint-Etienne and Reims, and 3 points behind Marseille. They're right in that Europa League fight. But a trip to Nîmes this season has proved difficult for a number of sides. And well, you'd argue pretty much every team has had a game when they've gone to Nîmes. They beat Marseille earlier in the season. They gave PSG a really good game in that 4-2 game relatively early in the year, and it's especially when it's relatively full and Nîmes are a side that play on the front foot. It's a very difficult place to go. So losing at Nîmes this season is by no means a disgrace. So although they would have been looking at the table and thinking we could get right back into the Europa League race here, and hoping for expecting to get something out of the game. It's by no means a shock that Nîmes won, given how well they have played this season. And Nîmes are in that Europa League fight too now. If you look at the table, Rennes have dropped into the bottom half on 42, and Nîmes have gone above them on 43 points, and that they've got an outside chance of sneaking in into a Europa League spot. If you're a Nîmes player, you'll fancy yourselves between now and the end of the season, and why not? It's very condensed, and the way Marseille played against Bordeaux on Friday night, they're definitely not sort of out of reach by any means. So a disappointment for Rennes, but they're still in it, and not surprising that Nîmes managed to come up with a big win, because they're a really good team. They're given their resources and the players at their disposal and the fact they came up, they're a very, very good team. So no disgrace, but it makes it more interesting. That top half is even more condensed than it was before. So fair play to Nîmes.
Yeah, and it's been an excellent season for them. They've been really entertaining going forward. They've had some great results and some great games, and to be in the top half of the table, guaranteed safety now with the points total that they have at well over 40 points is a terrific result for them, more than they could have hoped for, really. And while they are in that European fight, fixture lists of Marseille, Bordeaux, Lille, Reims, Monaco, Lyon have got one game against Guingamp, but that's maybe not too favourable on them chasing that side unless some results go their way. But as for Rennes, Jez, it is a little bit of a worry, because they have a decent end to the season. We've mentioned in the past that they have some winnable games in there, but a lot of games against sides in and around them. Nice, they've got Dijon, they've got Reims at some point. They've got Lille. They've still got a game against Strasbourg away from home as well. Are they maybe putting too many eggs in the Coupe de France basket, or do you think that maybe missing out on Europe this season and then using the summer to recollect under Stefan and work on what he's already done so far would be a better option for them?
I think that they're definitely on an upward trajectory. So whatever happens this season, they've got to sort of go into the summer and into next season sort of positive that they're going to sort of progress from this year, whatever happens. And at times they've looked like a European side this year. Obviously in Europe they've performed well, but I mean even in Ligue terms, sometimes they've performed well, sometimes they really haven't. And it was interesting that the story came out that at one point during the match, Ben Arthur said to one of his new opponents, "We're rubbish today, aren't we?" Which kind of, I mean, it's almost fitting that Ben Arthur, of all people, should say that, because he sort of, in a way, epitomises Rennes in the sense that at the weekend he started and finished a brilliant goal for Rennes, and then was completely non-existent in the midweek match. And I think that's just where Rennes are at the moment. They're a very, very talented team, still gradually finding their feet, or working out how to play with each other. So sometimes it goes very well, sometimes not so well. The team that Stefan fielded at the weekend in midweek clearly suggested that he's sort of looking after a couple of players with a view to the Coupe de France final, which makes sense. They don't have a bad run in at all, so that it's kind of frustrating that he's doing that, in the sense that I do think that Europa League spot through the league route is very much there to be had, but once they're in the final, it's a one-off match. They have given PSG a decent match or two this season, even if the final scoreline didn't suggest it. Anything can happen, because they do have match winners in their team. So it's understandable that they're putting all their eggs in that basket. And I suppose you could say that the advantage, in a way, is that because the Coupe de France final isn't right at the end of the season, there is even scope, should they lose, as I suppose you'd expect that they would, that they still could get a decent haul of points after that. And then who knows, with a few teams above them, a lot of them do have a reputation for suddenly going on bad runs as well. I don't think that they'll qualify for the Europa League through the league route, but it's certainly not an impossibility. And I understand them going all out and really focusing on that one game against PSG. And if they were to miss out on Europe, it would be a pity for them. But I don't think it's the end of the world, because I think they're well placed to really embark on a good league campaign next season.
Yeah, it's sort of a double-edged sword for them, isn't it? If they get into Europe, it maybe undoes some of the good work Stefan's done, having to focus on two competitions, which obviously didn't affect them an enormous amount this season, but the way they maybe want to build it, it could always affect them. And but at the same time, it's always great and attractive for players to want to stay and want to join the club if you've got European football. So it will come as some sort of disappointment. There's not out of it by any means, like you say, Jez, but with so many teams ahead of them, it's going to take so many results going their way now, as well as the favourable run to sort of catch up. And it starts this weekend when they play Nice as well, with team above them. But going into the games of the weekend, there's some ones really to watch, and perfectly, Adam. One starts the earliest on Friday night, as Dijon are hosting Amiens, because they've come back to life last week with that victory they got over Lyon. Saying it's unexpected is maybe not even quite half-arsing it, really, because I don't think anyone saw that result coming. But at the same time, now this game against Amiens has the double bluff that it not only would be a big 3 points if they can get it, but could even be pulling Amiens back into it, and that's got to be a huge motivator for Dijon, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think it does. I think it is a huge motivator for them. But given that, just with last week's game, it was sort of interesting that was it a good Dijon performance? I mean, yes, but was it Lyon sort of imploding? And although they'll be given a lot of confidence from that game last week, and the fact that they're within, I suppose, within touching distance this weekend, if they do win this game, it will be 4 points to Amiens. There's daylight there, I guess, at the end of the tunnel to some extent. But I think that last week may have been after the week Lyon had. L'Equipe's front page was a week in hell, describing Lyon's week with the defeat to Rennes in the cup semi-final, and the Genesio contract situation, which was just bizarre and just a brilliant story, because it's just completely crazy. But I think it might have been more a Lyon self-implosion with the fans getting on the back than a Dijon performance. And given Dijon's form, I would be a little bit worried about them going forward. I still don't think that they have the wherewithal to kind of rescue themselves from this situation. I think Amiens are going to be far too strong for them, although it's a very small difference in terms of personnel. But the addition of Konate and I know Godos will be injured, but players like Godos, out for a long time over the winter, have made a huge difference. Konate was fantastic against Saint-Etienne last week, 2 brilliant goals. And I just think Amiens are in a little bit of a false position. I think first 11, Pelissier knows how to get results from that team, and they're a much stronger team than Dijon are. And I think that even though this is theoretically a game that can drag Amiens back into the fight, I think that the bottom 3 teams are much worse than Amiens. And although there's a possibility they get something out of this game, being at home and being a big one at the bottom of the table, I still think that that it might be a little bit when it comes into the season, it might, in terms of the bottom 3, it might be a little bit in vain. And with injury worries as well, looking across the squad, especially midfield, they might have 1 or 2 injury concerns. So I would still back Amiens to get something from the game, which would kind of condemn the bottom 3 a little bit, as they didn't get results as well to being in that bottom 3 coming into the season. But Dijon will fancy themselves to be in that relegation playoff spot, and I have a feeling whoever gets into that relegation playoff spot will probably win the playoff against the Ligue 2 team. So there's a light at the end of the tunnel for all 3 of them, and it'll be tight down there. And Dijon will probably I think they'll get something from this game, but I don't think it'll be enough to drag Amiens back in.
It's an interesting one, though, this one as well, not just because for Dijon, it's going to be one they want to win to pull Amiens back into it. But looking at their fixtures ahead as well, there's a lot of games where maybe they have to maybe play a negative style, maybe think that a point might be a good one and bits like that. But in this one, with them only a point above the other 2 below them, knowing that they're playing the early game, they've got a little bit of momentum. They're at home against a side they can possibly, like we said before, pull them back. Is this a one where Kumbuari can look at and say, if we go out there, try and play some football, try and be an attacking, try and be positive from the off, it could be a really exciting game, given that sometimes these games at the bottom can be a little bit cagey. This feels in some way like it could be a little bit of a free hit.
Yeah, I certainly can't see this one being cagey. I think you only needed to look at Amiens' game against Saint-Etienne, which finished 2-2, but could easily have been something like 4-4. It really was end to end, and both teams really going for it. Amiens are on a good run, and although they're 4th from bottom, I do think they're safe. I mean, even if Dijon were to win this, they'd still be 4 behind, and I still don't think Amiens will be dragged into it. So I think they're playing with quite a nice freedom at the moment. And Dijon obviously are not in a good place, but I agree with Adam. I think they got a little lucky to be playing Lyon at the time that they played them. They're going to be a little lucky maybe next week to play Rennes just before the cup final, which is a good time to play them too. Both of them, these 2 matches are at home, so it's kind of a free hit. But yeah, Kumbuari should be going all out, kind of, so keep the momentum that we've got from last week, maintain it into this week and the next week, and then that gives us a huge cushion. And as you said, the fact that it's they're playing ahead of others, and it really is a big psychological edge, I think. I agree with Adam that I'm not absolutely sure that they've got enough about them this season to keep out of the bottom 2. But yeah, get a positive result. And by positive, I mean I agree with Adam there as well. I don't think a draw is enough. I think that they need to win. On paper, it's not the worst running at all, but home to Amiens, if you're going to survive as good as in form as Amiens are at the moment, this is the kind of match that Dijon have to win for the points, but also for that psychological blow that they can sort of put on Guingamp and Caen as well. So there's definitely points to be had there, but I'm not sure they're going to get them.
Yeah, and like we say, that I think we both make a good point that a point's not really enough, because the way that everyone keeps, one of the bottom sides keeps nicking a 3 point somewhere, it keeps tossing and turning, and a point against Amiens only puts them 2 points above everyone else. So if someone does get a win over the weekend, they're all of a sudden back in the drop zone, and it's not been really worth their time with the games running out. But very quickly on Amiens, Adam, and you've mentioned him already, because we all thought that Moussa Konate was excellent against Saint-Etienne, and has been superb since he's come back from injury as well. In the summer, is he someone you expect to move on and maybe a bigger side in Ligue 1, or even someone in mid-table in the Bundesliga, or even the Premier League take a look at him, because he can be such a lethal striker and will really add to some of these teams that are struggling to score goals?
Sorry, my connection knocked out, Nathan. What was the question?
So it was on Moussa Konate. Do you believe that?
Oh yeah.
With the form he's been given, especially, is he someone that would be? It should be interesting. Teams chasing Europe in Ligue 1, or even maybe a sort of mid-table Premier League side, or even a sort of European chasing Bundesliga side. Those sides that are struggling for goals, he could really add to, couldn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really impressive what Moussa Konate's done in Ligue 1, and quite quietly as well. Last season, 13 league goals for a team that didn't score many and were quite sort of defensive and pragmatic. And, it's not like he's sort of limiting himself to scoring against the teams around him, which would be very useful, of course. But he's got a brace against PSG at a Stade de Lincoln last year. And I just think he leads the line fantastically, and he offers so many things to this team. He's an outlet. He holds the ball up really well. He's not particularly slow. He can take people on if he wants to. On his day, he's a very, very good finisher. And, maybe on his day is a little bit harsh. He's relatively consistent in that regard. He's a player that I think is really, really, really important. In fact, crucial to Amiens. We saw what they were like within the sort of the 12, 15 games he was injured, and they slipped towards the relegation zone. They looked like they were going to be down there at Dijon and Caen and Guingamp for quite a long time. And as soon as he come back, he's everything's changed, because he just makes them click. He's just pivotal to the way they play. In terms of where he could go, yeah, I think absolutely. I think he's quite an ambitious player as well. At Sion in Switzerland, he had 2 very good seasons. I think it was 2, and then for the sort of last season there, he sort of kicked up a fuss because he wanted to move away, which he didn't get, and he felt like he'd been held against his will a little bit. He felt like he wanted to move on and wasn't allowed to because the right deal didn't come through the club, and eventually went to Amiens, and which is perhaps a little bit below where he would have expected himself originally, given that at the time Amiens were like basically a national team. Like, I think at one stage there's sort of 5 players who were with the club from the days of their national season, which was two years before. They got 2 promotions behind Strasbourg, so they're a small club, and perhaps he wasn't expecting to go to a club of Amiens stature, but he's been fantastic. He's had a couple of attitude issues, and he had a couple of attitude issues in Switzerland as well, but seems to have sorted it out, and seems to have accepted some responsibility as a leader at Amiens. And I think he would be fantastic for a mid-table, or even upper mid-table, or even European Ligue 1 team. And I think you mentioned the Bundesliga there. I think he'd fit a lot of Bundesliga teams really, really well. If say Eintracht Frankfurt, for example, who are having a fantastic season, Niko Kovac left last year, and they've kicked on amazingly, having won the cup and finished 8th last year into the quarterfinals of the Europa League and 4th in the Bundesliga. If they were to lose Sebastian Eller or Jovic, he'd be a good replacement for either of those. And I think he's a really underrated player, and despite his injuries, his goal tally is good this year, and I think he's honestly single-handedly keeping Amiens in the division. Although they've got other good players as well, I like Moncondouy, and I think Rassi's been a good signing. Mendoza's good on his day. Zungu's good when he's fit. And Prince Guano's a decent captain as well. Gunner's a good goalkeeper, but I think Konate's the man that makes this team click. And if he'd been there all season, if he'd been in the team for those sort of 12, 15 games and hadn't got an injury, they'd be mid-table comfortably, I think. So yeah, great player and underrated in this league, and will do a job at a Europa League team or in a mid-table top 5 league anywhere in Europe, I think.
Yeah, and it's an interesting time to get him, isn't it? He's just turned 26, so he's got time on his side. I was actually surprised he was that young, at least anyway. So it's a credit to him. It's a great chance for him to maybe try and advance his career. Although I don't think Amiens fans will be particularly pleased to hear that. But let's get predictions. I think we've got an idea of where we're going on this one. But I'll start with yourself on this one, Jez. What do you think the score will be? Yes, what do you think the score will be?
Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. Chatting away to myself. I think it's going to be 1-0. If I had to pick anyone to win, I'd lean towards Amiens, but I think it'll be a decent match. But yeah, I don't think Dijon are going to do enough to win it.
Adam?
Yeah, 1-1 for me too, I think.
Yeah, it feels like a 1-1, doesn't it? I think the fact that Dijon will treat this as a free hit is one thing, and then I don't really trust them to keep out an Amiens side that can be really dangerous. On to our next game for this week, and it involves one of the other relegation sides in Caen, as they are hosting Angers, and Jez, it's an important time for Caen after that result against Monaco, which was somewhat fortuitous. We said it at the time. They felt like they needed to try and build on that, but they really failed to do that against Nîmes. They were pretty much beaten throughout. Really, they didn't pose an enormous amount of threat and reverted to type, which means that these next 4 games, especially, are pretty much crucial to the season. So it starts with that game on Saturday. Afterwards, they go away to Nice, which, while they've been pretty good at times, they're also a team that will give you half a chance. And then their dramatic doublehead against Dijon and Guingamp, which will certainly control their season. But they'll want to have some kind of control to their fate, and that starts with that game in Angers, and it feels like it's must win.
Sorry, I've done it again.
Sorry.
I guess they're in a very similar position to Dijon right now. They got their lucky win against Monaco, and I do think it was lucky. I think Sandro was one of the season best performances in goal in that match, and the Monaco didn't take their chances. They had so many of them that I think can't have to consider themselves a bit fortunate to get 3 points there. And then, as you said, sort of coming off the back of that, you'd hope that they would try to build some momentum for that, and they really didn't. It was a really comfortable win for Nîmes. Now at home to Angers, just as Dijon are home to Amiens, have a similar kind of records as well. We know that Angers they don't seem to win much, but they're always hard to beat. They've drawn, I think, their last 5. They're in a comfortable position, so possibly with half an eye on summer holidays already. They've had a bit of a blow today, in that it's been confirmed that Shaken Doy is out for the rest of the season, and possibly even the beginning of the next season with cruciate ligament injury. So they could get lucky again, in the sense that this is probably as good a time as any to play a team like Angers. Can't have to come into this match more committed, more motivated than their opponents. But again, the question is that enough? And to me, Caen really are the poorest side in the division. I know they're not quite bottom at the moment, but I think they're a poorer side than Guingamp. And again, I think although they've got that double header coming up, this one feels like a match that, if they've got aspirations to stay up, they really need to get something out of. But again, I'm not convinced they can.
It's a difficult one for them, isn't it? But at the same time, they will have a glimmer of hope at least, Adam, because as much like Jez mentioned, their opponents are going to be without Shaken Doy. How big of a blow is that for Angers? Not just for the end of this season, because they're safe, so they'll be happy about that. But even the start of next season, he might be missing because of that injury. He has been a bit of a talisman on his previous spell, and he's been getting back into form, and it's a bit of a blow.
It is. You're absolutely right. I mean, I think I would have given you a very different answer if you'd asked me this question about 2 weeks ago. You're right. Shaken Doy has been pivotal to Angers since they got promoted. He was fantastic. He's just an absolute tank. First of all, he's perfect to the way Angers play. In that sort of first period when they got promoted, he scored twice on the opening day. The first game back in Ligue when they beat Montpellier 2-0 away from home. And he's so good in the air. He's so physical and so powerful. And just it leads by example, and he carried that midfield for a long time, which include Romain Saïs, who's now at Wolves and doing okay, and Thomas Mangani, who's been up and down, not his best season, but has been an absolutely fantastic player. And for Angers, now into his 30s, perhaps a little bit sort of past his best. But that midfield was fantastic, and Ndoye was the best of them. And when he left, I really felt that might have been it for them, because he was so crucial to them, and he was, you're absolutely right, a talismanic presence. But didn't work out for him at Birmingham. Started in the team and dropped out. Harry Redknapp, I think, was in charge at that point. It was just a bit of a mess, and never found his way back into the team. And then, when he returned, I thought that was, great signing. I thought it was the type of thing that would be, at the start of the season when they looked poor. I think in my predictions, I even had Angers maybe second bottom or bottom at the start of the year. And I felt that on Ndoye returning would change a lot for them. The way the sort of presence he has, and how well suited to the way Moulin plays. And he's been good in spells, but I think that now he's 33. I think he's looked 33 this season. He's looked old. He's looked like he's past his best form, which we saw in that brief spell, a couple of years when he came up from Créteil in Ligue 2. He was made captain very quickly at Angers. It just suits him, and he's been important. But I think, excuse me. But I think that an interesting thing happened with Angers last week with Jeff Rainier-Adelaide, excuse me, playing a little bit deeper than he usually does. He's played up front in the central position alongside Bahoken at times, and alongside Wilfred Kangar at times in a sort of a 5-3-2 sort of situation. But last week he sort of dropped almost into attacking midfield, and I've always liked Rainier-Adelaide from deeper when he drops off and runs at people. And I kind of, if he's playing off a striker, but in a central position, so it doesn't necessarily help. It doesn't really suit him if it's wide. If he's playing wide, because he's sort of charged with like being a man and getting across, or maybe cutting inside and shooting on his other foot. But he sort of fills that slot that Ndoye would fill in that midfield, who as the most forward thinking of the three, to get forward and support attacks, and in a very different way. Obviously, he's going to interpret it in a very, very different way, but I think he's potentially capable of having a very similar presence. Hadn't scored in Ligue 1 he's had a decent enough season, but he hadn't scored in Ligue 1 until last year, and scored twice, playing in a little bit with withdrawn position, almost as an attacking midfielder. So I think that they may have sort of stumbled across something there in Ndoye's absence that one may suit the team in a very different way to Ndoye, obviously, and may suit Adelaide, because I think that he's a talented guy, he's a talented player, but flitting in a little bit in and out of games, he doesn't really impose himself too much. But I think this kind of plays to his skill set of running from deep and of carrying the ball and carrying attacks forward, which is sort of what Ndoye did with using his physicality and his aerial ability a little bit, sort of propelled the team forward. And I think at Rainier-Adelaide, although obviously it's only been 1 or 2 games, that he's very capable of doing that as well, because he's, like I say, he's a very talented player. And they were good in drawing with Rennes last week. They've got 14 draws in the league this season, which is classic Angers. And although they are perhaps if you look at on the face of it on the beach already, I don't think Moulin will let the intensity drop. And I think they're a dangerous proposition between now and the end of the year. I think, Baptiste Santamaria in midfield alongside him has had a really good season. Mangani on form again is still very capable of having really, having a lot of impact in this league. So although Angers, in mid-table obscurity at the moment, I think they're a dangerous proposition for Caen at the weekend.
Yeah, and that makes it a really interesting one. They were playing with a bit of freedom, and like you say, Jeff Rainier-Adelaide was really good at the weekend and finally showed that promise he's got. Let's hope he can close out the season with some excellent form. On to predictions then. This time I'll start with you, Adam. What do you think the score will be?
I'm going to say 2-1 Angers.
Jez?
I was going to go the same. I'll say 2-0 just to be different, but I hope that because they're safe, they can cut loose a bit now. They've scored 5 in their last 2 games. Okay, they've conceded 5, but I do think there's some real talented footballers there, and I'd like to see them sort of let off the leash a little bit more. And now is as good a time as any to do that. So yeah, I think they'll win it. I think they'll pass them.
Yeah, I think we're all a little bit hopeful of that, and that's why I think it'll be a 3-0 win for Angers. I really don't think this Caen side has got an enormous amount. They were incredibly lucky in that win against Monaco, and I think the Nîmes one, where they lost that straight after that, confirmed that it was sort of a slice of fortune that saved them, and a great game by Samba as well in goal that helped them out. I just can't see them winning that one. They're going to struggle against Nice as well, which means those 2 games either side of April, May is going to be absolutely massive for them. On to our next game for this weekend, and it concerns sides a little bit further up in the table, at least one of them in Saint-Etienne as they host Bordeaux. Jez, it was finally focusing on the away side first. They're pretty comfortably going to be in a mid-table sort of mediocrity style, but a much improved performance against Marseille in the week. It's maybe took two relatively fortuitous goals to beat Marseille, but they were solid defensively. They weren't really troubled by Marseille at any point. They played a little bit more freedom going forward. Maybe Paulo Sousa's finally starting to get his words through to a few players and showing that, well, at least from a few of them, what they can expect from next season.
Yeah, I think mid-table mediocrity is probably a good description of Bordeaux for the last few years, actually. And I think there are shoots of there's something to be hopeful for. I think they've got a new coach who does like to play good football. They've got some talented youngsters there if they can keep them happy. Players like Koundé and Kamano, for example. I guess there's probably a reasonable chance that they won't be there from the start of next season. But if they can have a good summer, with the sort of foundations that the club has got, a decent stadium, they should be doing a lot better than they are. And although that's the Marseille match is their first win for a while, it is off the back of 3 draws, so they're already sort of making themselves more difficult to beat. The Bordeaux match, I mean, we'll wait and see, but you could look at it as a misnomer, because there's the ridiculous stat that Marseille haven't won there since 1977, and obviously Marseille at the moment really are in the doldrums. There was the sort of kind of off the cuff post-match moan of lamentation of Florian Thauvin, which Garcia was trying to play down today, but there's no doubt that there are issues there, and players are pretty low at the moment. So maybe it's not right to judge Bordeaux too much on that Marseille result, but as I said, sort of taken with the 3 matches before that, they do look to be going in the right direction. I think Sousa's doing a good job. I think we said when he was appointed that it's kind of a free pass for him for the rest of the season. It's almost like he's going to have the advantage of sort of starting Bordeaux's pre-season a couple of months before everyone else, because again, they are safe. They have got those, as I said, those foundations, and if he can already sort of start now in March, April, May, getting players accustomed to his style, his work ethic, his training methods, then that gives them a sort of 4 or 5 month summer in a way, and they can really be ready to push on next season.
Yeah, it absolutely does make a difference for them, because they definitely looked a little bit better last week. Let's hope that they can continue with that against a Saint-Etienne side who have been pretty entertaining in the last few weeks, if not particularly efficient, really. Adam is maybe the best way of putting it, because they've sort of lost a little bit of the defensive discipline they had last season, and in the last game at least it did end up costing the game against Amiens. Again, it was a real great chance for them to be still chasing for a Champions League spot with Lyon, but to drop the points has maybe just left it a little bit far for them with the games they've got left and the games that Lyon have got left. But at the same time, they have to treat every game now they've seen them slip up like that, like it's their cup final, and if they do win out and they don't seize upon any opportunities that come up again, they have a shout at Champions League football at least.
Yeah, absolutely they do. I think with Saint-Etienne, it's the difference between the home and away form sort of showed last week. If you look at the home Ligue and table, they're third, a point behind Lyon, based on home records. Obviously, PSG are miles ahead. But you look at the away table, and they're all the way down in 8th. Strasbourg, Reims, Nice, Montpellier all have better away records than them, and they're sort of 12 points adrift of Lille in that away table. So I think the result at Amiens last week wasn't overly surprising, given that Amiens are much improved of late, and a draw away at Amiens isn't a terrible result at the moment. And they did pretty well to get that, to be honest. I honestly think Amiens, I watched this game today, and I thought even though Amiens had a man sent off, they probably did enough for at least a draw, probably deserved to win the game overall, given the sending off and how well they defended and Konaté's 2 brilliant goals. So I think it's a decent enough result, but I think you get two different teams with Saint-Etienne. When you're at home, they've got the fantastic support, and they're a little bit more expansive, and I think that it suits kind of Gasset a little bit more, the way he sets up his teams. So when they go away, they're just a little bit porous. They can be beaten for pace at the back, and they perhaps don't have the physicality to impose themselves in forward areas in away games, and perhaps not the creativity if Rémi Cabella's not in form to break teams down. So when in that sort of situation, and so they definitely get two different teams. And I think if their away form had been even slightly better this season, then they'd be in that third place spot, ahead of Lyon in the table. But I think maybe it's growing pains for this team. There's a lot of sort of new players who are pretty key to the team who've come in over the course of the season. Khazri in the summer, and Villa, who's been there just over a year now. Banassa's only just come into the team. There's things that there are holes and things that need changing in this team, and I think that is shown in their away form, that perhaps don't have the cohesion quite yet. Although perhaps they should do, given how long Gasset's been there and how long some of the players have been there, and you would have hoped that they would have gelled completely by now. But I still honestly think that they're a little bit individualistic. They're kind of relying on Khazri or Cabella, who really flits in and out of form, or even Hamouma, who's even worse from jumping in and out of form. So they just need to be a little bit more to work on that cohesion, and perhaps that'll come next season, and that away record will improve. But given the situation, when you look at the league beyond their own situation, Lyon are very capable of imploding between now and the end of the year, given the atmosphere at the game against Dijon at the weekend, with fans singing for 7 minutes of silence for 7 years without a trophy. Genesio has no idea whether he's coming or going. Neither does Orlas. It's a complete mess, really. So they're very capable of dropping those 6 points, and Saint-Etienne are very capable of catching them. Marseille, without Balotelli last week, looked a completely different team. They're in trouble as well. So yeah, Saint-Etienne, although they're not favourites, then they'll definitely fancy themselves to overhaul Lyon and get into that third place.
Yeah, and it's a frustration for them, isn't it? Even though, like you say, Amiens played really well in that game, the circumstances of them being a man down should automatically make you think that they should be. Well, any person playing any game, it makes you think you should be winning with a man up. And the fact that both Lyon and Marseille, either side of them, lost, they could have only been 4 points off Lyon. They could have been 5 points ahead of Marseille, which is great for both reasons, really, that they get closer to Champions League and they strengthen their Europa League play. So it would just be maybe niggle at them a little bit that they didn't take those points, and maybe that'll help fuel the fire at the weekend. I think that will help. I think if they're going to win 2-1 against Bordeaux, who've shown a little bit, but I think they're definitely sort of looking towards next season at least now. Adam, what do you think the score will be?
I'm going to stick with my Saint-Etienne at home are good and go 2-0 Saint-Etienne.
Jez?
I'm going to go the same result. I'll say 3-1. I think Saint-Etienne, they've got over their bad blip. I think they're playing decent football now. I think, rightly or wrongly, they've got possibly a couple of players who might be playing for summer moves as well. And yeah, they've got Lyon in their sights, and I think they need to make sure that if Lyon do slip up, which they may well do, then they're going to sort of be ready to pounce. So yeah, I think comfortable win for Saint-Etienne.
Yeah, that will really strengthen their chances, depending on all the results around them as well. On to the final game of the weekend, and possibly the most important one, as PSG can seal the title on Sunday evening. They only need a point, as Lille will not be able to catch them if they draw this one. Paris Saint-Germain still have a game in hand as well, of course, so that will come against Nantes sometime in the near future, but it looks like a foregone conclusion. But the important thing for Lille, at least this weekend, Jez, is for them to try and spoil the party. Can they do that?
I think it's going to be difficult, but again, as I sort of mentioned about Rennes earlier in the season, I think of all the teams, Lille did give PSG a good fight. I think Lille's form has dropped off a little bit since when they played PSG the first time around. But I think they if all their players who've been performing so well this season are at the top of their game, playing at home as well, I do think that they can give PSG a tough time. Although PSG are going to sort of steep it to the title, they haven't, for understandable reasons, been at the top of their game the last few weeks. They've sort of relied on Mbappe to bail them out a couple of times. I mean, even last weekend, although he didn't get his name on the score sheet, I think he turned the match. It was his great run that led to the corner, that led to the equaliser, and he almost scored the winner a couple of times as well. So I think Lille should really be up for this. Firstly, to maintain the gap that they've got with Lille, but also I just think this, they've had a fantastic season, and this would be I don't think there's any doubt they're going to get Champions League football, and this would be the sort of the icing on the cake, I guess, that to really sort of make the mark on it. They've impressed everyone in Europe, I think, this season. But if they can top that all off with a win over PSG and the chance to delay the title for one more week, I think it's a great motivation for them.
Yeah, they've got to see that as a pretty big positive for them if they can make that happen. But and interestingly enough, I think, at least anyway in this one, Adam, that PSG have shown that they're not particularly great against sides that are willing to attack them, and a great counter-attacking side against a defence that can be a little bit shaky at times. It is kind of a little bit of their kryptonite. So they're not going to go to the Pierre Moray at the weekend thinking that they're going to be celebrating on the pitch, and the Lille players especially would not want to be wanting for that to happen.
No, absolutely, and I think you're right about that they're susceptible to this sort of team, and perhaps it's to do with Thomas Tuchel's sort of switch away from for the sort of possession-based 4-3-3. That in Ligue 1, although perhaps it was a bit one-dimensional in European competition, in Ligue 1, that kind of system really wore teams down, and if they were fortunate enough to get the ball of PSG, they were, one, so tired from chasing them, and two, didn't really know what to do with the ball once they got it. But there's definitely a lot more space in that PSG midfield now that they're often playing sort of that 4-4-2 or 3 centre backs, and the PSG a little bit more exposed. Especially when I know that it's not been the case recently, but with sort of Draxler in there, and that there are goals to be had against PSG. The problem is that they're just far too good in most other departments for them, and in terms of league performances, this has probably been their best season. They could well exceed 100 points in the QSI era. I'm talking, well, to be honest, any era really. They could well exceed 100 points, and the way Tuchel's got them playing it has been, although the United defeat is a huge caveat to this, it has been a step up, and I think they're a lot more varied and a lot more tactically diverse, and a lot more streetwise than perhaps than they have been under previous coaches. Although again, they still managed to implode against United in that Champions League game. But it's the fact that he was offered a new contract relatively recently shows that that if as far as the club's point of view, there's been a bit of a step up. But this is one area where it's almost like a necessary kind of thing. To be more varied in your play in with this team, you kind of need to open up a little bit in Ligue 1 and play different types of systems rather than just grinding teams down, which doesn't work in the bigger games, which is where it really matters. But having said that, they've lost once and drawn 3 from 30 games, so it can't be too big of a deal. But I think there's especially at home, I think there's a route here for Lille to get something out of the game, and depending on PSG's 11, because obviously they're suffering a bit of injuries, and Tuchel's mentioned of late that he's frustrated about the small size of the squad, and they've been in a number of games recently where they haven't been able to fill the bench. Whether if that actually is the case, because they've got a very good youth system and there are plenty of players that could easily sit on the bench. Whether that's actually the case, or Tuchel is just sort of angling for more players and trying to prove a point by not filling the bench with his first team squad. They've had 5 on the bench a couple of times. That's open to debate, but I think PSG's a little bit more open style is exciting for the league, even if they do end up winning most games. And hopefully it's sort of a thing. It's something that facilitates them being a little bit more diverse in the bigger games when it comes to those next season and on occasion this season. So I think Lille are a threat in this game given their style and the fact that they're at home. PSG are pretty omnipotent at the Parc des Princes. So I think there are goals here for Lille.
Yeah, and that's going to be an interesting one, isn't it? I think this could be a really entertaining game because I tell you what, there's one thing you don't want, and that's another team walking into your stadium and winning the title. That's exactly what you want to try and avoid, really. But I'm sure PSG will be thinking otherwise as well, and it has the potential to be the last maybe exciting game we see from the Parisians, other than the Coupe de France final. But let's maybe not be too negative on them, at least anyway, to end the season. But let's get a prediction, and I'll start with you on this one, Jez. What do you think the score will be?
I'm not sure they'll do enough to win, but I've just got a feeling Lille will get something out of it. So I'm going to say another 2-2.
Adam?
I was going to say 2-2 as well, but to be different, I'll say 3-3, just very exciting.
I think Lille might nick this one, I'm going to go with 2-1. I think there's no doubt PSG are going to score, but they've been pretty indifferent ever since that Manchester United result, really, other than then in the Coupe de France. And I think that Lille hold the party for at least the weekend, at least anyway. But it's an inevitable thing that's going to happen. But I'm hoping that, or I think that Lille will stop them from at least celebrating on their hallowed turf instead, and wait for maybe when they're at home to celebrate the final nail in the Ligue coffin. And that's all for this week. My thanks to Adam, Jez, and all of you listening at home. Join us for the main show back on Monday. But for now, enjoy your weekend of football.